Welcome to Thangka number 12. This is Tsongkhapa's year 50 to 53 in his life. Remember, he passes away at 63. So yeah, we're coming to the later part of his life. So beginning directly down at 6 o'clock at the bottom center of the Thangka, then the first thing is, Tsongkhapa is giving more teachings on Tantra and Sutra. And then so just going just to the left of that, then you see this big wrathful kind of Buddha with 6 arms abiding in a blaze of fire. So this is 6-armed Mahakala. At this time, Lama Tsongkhapa has a vision of 6-armed Mahakala, and Mahakala pledges to protect him and assist with his virtuous activities for the remainder of his life. And then just above that, Lama Tsongkhapa is giving a teaching to 2 or 3 disciples. So this time he makes his second most important disciple, Khedrup Gelik Pelzampo, or Khedrup J, as he's commonly known, who's again a scholar from the Sakya tradition. He's quite a bit younger than Tsongkhapa. After Tsongkhapa passes away, he becomes the second holder of the throne of Ganden after Tsongkhapa. And Khedrup J especially composes works on Tantra. He also has some important works on emptiness and valid cognition, and one small work on the perfections. But Khedrup J is famous for, after Tsongkhapa passed away, very forcefully and very vociferously refuting those who argued that Tsongkhapa's interpretation of emptiness and other subtle points in the teachings were wrong. Tsongkhapa very forcefully responded to those arguments against Tsongkhapa's works and Tsongkhapa's view, and thereby upheld Tsongkhapa's legacy in the several decades after Tsongkhapa passed away. So at this time also, Tsongkhapa composes 2 of his most important and most famous treatises on the Middle Way. He begins to compose a commentary on Nagarjuna's most important work, the Root Wisdom. But then after starting to compose the first chapter, he realizes that without presenting a clear way to distinguish among the teachings of the Buddha between those that are definitive and can be taken at face value, and those that are interpretive, we need to read behind the words and interpret like what the Buddha actually meant by teaching that. Because within the 3 turnings of the wheel, the different sutras that Buddha taught, there's many inconsistencies and many apparent contradictions within the teaching. So it's not possible just to take literally everything that the Buddha said, but rather many things need to be interpreted in order to find a coherent way to understand all of the Buddha's teachings. So for that reason, Tsongkhapa wrote what His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says is his most favorite treatise by Tsongkhapa. It's called The Essence of Eloquence, distinguishing the interpretive and definitive meaning of the Buddha's word, intent, and distinguishing the definitive and interpretive intent. There are translations of this by Robert Thurman, and a translation of the mind-only section by Jeffrey Hopkins, which is excellent. I don't think the emptiness sections are translated so far, but it should be soon. So then Tsongkhapa wrote this work first in the current day area of Sera, near Lhasa. And then after he completed that, then he completed writing the rest of his commentary on Nagarjuna's Root Wisdom. So he wrote those works kind of together over about 2 years at Sera Choding, this area near Lhasa. It's said while he was writing these works, at some point he came to a very difficult passage which he wasn't sure how to interpret, so he made strong requests and offerings to his deity, seen as one essence with his guru, and then by the force of that, then lines from I think describing 20 different kinds of emptiness from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras appeared in the sky, written in gold letters, and absorbed into one huge boulder nearby. And that boulder later was in the courtyard of Sera Monastery. Then later, then the next scene in the Thangka is 2 representatives from the emperor of the Ming dynasty. The emperor sends them with an invitation letter inviting Tsongkhapa to come to the capital of China to be his own personal teacher and to teach and spread the Buddha Dharma in China. Tsongkhapa knows with his clairvoyance, he knows a couple days before these emissaries arrive, and without telling anyone, he flees over the backside of the mountain and goes to a different place so that he doesn't have to meet them face to face. But the emissaries, they carry many gifts, it's like a big entourage. of many gifts in this letter of invitation, because at that time, in the world kind of Tibet, this is the most powerful person kind of that exists, the Emperor of China. So eventually the emissaries, they meet with some of Tsongkhapa's other disciples, some scholars, some political leaders, and then some of them go to speak to Tsongkhapa. Eventually what happens is Tsongkhapa, he writes a letter excusing himself, saying that he's not well, he's quite old, and it would be more beneficial for the Dharma for him to stay in Tibet. And in his place, he sends one of his main disciples, Jamchen Choe, Sakya Yeshe, who then goes and becomes the tutor of the emperor. And then after some years, this Jamchen Choe returns towards the end of Tsongkhapa's life, about 10 years later, he returns to Lhasa and actually is the founder of Sera Monastery. Right. Then the next scene in this Thangka, Tsongkhapa is teaching. He's giving extensive teachings again in Sera on different works, the Fundamental Wisdom, Essence of Eloquence, his own work, the 400 Stanzas by Aryadeva, the great treatise on the stages of the path and on the stages of Tantra, which he composed. Tsongkhapa is very concerned also that his followers keep their vows purely. So he composes and teaches a commentary on the 50 verses on Guru devotion by Ashvaghosha, and also on a commentary on the morality chapter from the Bodhisattva grounds. Right, is a commentary on how to keep the Bodhisattva vows purely. So the next thing in this Thangka is the Monlam Chemo, or the Great Prayer Festival, which is the third of Tsongkhapa's great deeds, of his 4 great deeds. This is the third one. The first was restoring the Maitreya statue at Xingji. The second is, one way to consider it is his extensive teachings of the Vinaya and resurrection of the pure practice of all the Vinaya, keeping the vows, monastic vows, and also following all the more subtle kind of trainings of a Buddhist monk or nun. So the third great deed is establishing the Great Prayer Festival in Lhasa. So you might have noticed in the previous Thangkas, then every year during it's called the 15 Days of Miracles, Tsongkhapa would go to a place where there's a special temple, a special holy objects, especially powerful holy objects, and make extensive, together with his disciples, both lay and ordained followers, then he would make extensive offerings and extensive prayers during that very auspicious time. So as kind of an extension of that, then this year, as Tsongkhapa's fame spread and his influence, and he gathered more and more disciples, then at this time all the kind of the most scholarly and the most powerful people around the Lhasa area, they had become Tsongkhapa's disciples by this time, and Tsongkhapa himself had received many offerings. So all of whatever possessions he had, wealth, and then he offered for he made extensive offerings at this time to all the holy objects in Lhasa. The most powerful holy object being the Shakyamuni Buddha statue in the Jorkang, the main temple in Lhasa. And there's also very sacred statues there of Avalokiteshvara and other deities. So Tsongkhapa invited all the people from the surrounding area and broader Tibet to participate in this great prayer festival during the 15 Days of Miracles. This is at the age, I think Tsongkhapa was 52. It's between 50 and 53 at this time. So it said that 10,000 monks gathered and many more thousands lay people, and they offered liquid gold to the body of the Buddha and a gold leaf to the face of the Shakyamuni Buddha statue there. They offered a famous golden crown to his head, and earrings and necklace and other ornaments, bracelets, giving the Shakyamuni Buddha statue there, who had been in the supreme nirmanakaya aspect, the aspect of a fully ordained monk, transformed into the Sambhogakaya aspect, the enjoyment body, the aspect of a Buddha abiding in a pure land, as a way of making an auspicious connection for the teachings to spread in Tibet. I'm not sure actually the full reasons for that, and some say it was controversial, but apparently it had been prophesied that offerings like that would be made in the sutra. So then for 15 days, extensive prayers and offerings were made. Tsongkhapa and many other people had miraculous visions of different Buddhas. Many yogis in the area said that they could see when the Buddhas, different Buddhas and holy beings, Buddhist saints were invoked to come to that place. They said they could see them in the sky above, and that independence upon the virtue that beings gathered. Some yogis had visions of just like a procession of sentient beings going up into the sky. The meaning being that independence upon the virtue gathered during this time, thousands of beings would take rebirth. After they died, they would take rebirth in higher states of existence, where they had better conditions to generate realizations. Then after the prayer festival, some of Tsongkhapa's disciples suggested that, because now he's quite old, he's like 53 by this time, he has thousands of monastic followers, and he's been leading a wandering existence all his life, not staying in any one place for very long, but moving around from place to place. So with so many disciples, it's very difficult for them all to move together, and then difficult for them to continue receiving teachings, and also physically difficult for Tsongkhapa himself, right? So they suggested that he establish his own monastery, right, where he can shape the monastic training and study and practice of the Buddhist teachings according to his view of, and his vision of how to properly practice the Buddhist teachings. So he accepted to do that, and then they started searching for a location to establish a monastery. Right? So that concludes the Thangka 12.